You know, sometimes life asks you a question you don't feel ready to answer. And for me, that question was love. Not the simple kind, not the easy kind, the kind that shakes you, breaks you, and somehow still heals you. I risked everything for her, not because I wanted to be a hero, not because I wanted to be a hero, not because I wanted to some grand story to tell, but because when you truly love someone, their happiness becomes a part of your own. And in that moment, every fear, every doubt, every consequence just fades because all you can see is the person who makes your world feel a little less heavy, a little more alive. And today, I want to share that journey with you, not the perfect parts, but the real ones. The moments that taught me what love really means and why some risks are worth everything. I never thought I would stand here and talk about something as fragile and immeasurable as love, music. I never thought I would reach into the most vulnerable part of myself and try to explain what it means to risk everything for someone. But there comes a moment in life when silence becomes heavier than the truth, when holding back becomes more painful than speaking out. And that moment is now, because there was a time in my life, a time when love didn't feel like a choice. It felt like gravity. It felt like something that pulled me toward her. Not gently, not slowly, but with the force of something ancient and undeniable music. I risked my everything for her not because I was fearless, but because I couldn't imagine a world where I didn't try. I remember the first time I understood how deeply she had woven herself into my life. It wasn't in a grand moment. It wasn't during our happiest memories, music. It was in the quiet space between two heartbeats. A simple pause, a glance, a breath, and in that moment, I could feel it. My world wasn't mine anymore. It was ours. And that realization frightened me more than anything else ever had. When you give someone that kind of access to your heart, you hand them a piece of yourself you can never take back. But you do it anyway because love feels like the only truth that actually means something. There were days when everything around us felt fragile, like the world had turned into glass and every step might break something we couldn't fix. Loving her wasn't easy. It wasn't safe. It wasn't predictable. It was a storm beautiful, powerful, and capable of tearing everything apart. But even in the fiercest winds, even when it felt like I was losing myself, a part of me knew that love, like this, it doesn't come often. It doesn't come lightly. When it arrives, it demands something from you, your courage, your honesty, your willingness to stand in the fire and not walk away. I risked everything for her because she awakened something in me I didn't even know still existed. Hope, not the childish kind that expects everything to be perfect, but the quiet, resilient kind that expects everything to be perfect. But the quiet, resilient kind that whispers, maybe life can still be beautiful. She brought warmth into places in me that had been cold for so long. She made the world softer, brighter, more meaningful, and you don't walk away from that, you hold on to it. Even if your hands shake, even if the cost terrifies you. People talk about love like it's some gentle dream, like it's always soft or peaceful. But real love is raw. It's messy. It tears down your walls and exposes every part of you would rather hide. And still, somehow it asks for more. It asks you to trust, even when your heart has been broken before. It asks you to trust, even when your heart has been broken before. It asks you to leap, even when you can't see where you'll land. And loving her, music, loving her felt like standing on the edge of everything I knew, staring into the unknown, and stepping forward anyway. I remember the nights when I questioned everything, my strength, my choices, my capacity to hold on. I remember wondering if I was going too far, giving too much, risking more than I could afford to lose. But every time doubt began to wrap itself around me, I thought of her smile. Not the smile she gave the world, but the smile she gave the world, but the smile she gave me when she thought no one else was looking. The one that held a softness, a sincerity that made everything else feel distant. That smile made every risk feel small. It reminded me why love is worth the uncertainty, the fear, the vulnerability. There were moments when life tried to pull us apart, moments when circumstances felt too big, too heavy, too unforgiving. But I learned something in those moments. Love isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. It's about persistence. It's about choosing someone again and again, especially when the world tells you it'd be easier to walk away. I chose her every time. Not because I expected her to be perfect, but because even in her imperfections, she was the person my heart refused to live without. I risked everything for her because she saw me not the version of myself I showed the world, but the real me, the me behind the guarded eyes and quiet moments. She saw the parts of me that were bruised, tired, uncertain, and she didn't turn away. She didn't flinch. She didn't ask me to be more than I was. She just stayed. And sometimes the greatest love in the world is the love that simply stays, the love that doesn't run when things get messy. The love that sits with you in the dark and waits for the morning. To love someone deeply is to hand them the power to break you. and trust that they won't. I knew that when I let her into my life. I knew that when I let her into my life. I knew that when I let her into my heart. I knew that every choice I made, every sacrifice, every risk, came with the possibility of loss. But I placed my heart in her hands anyway, because love without risk isn't love. It's a transaction. And she was never a transaction to me. She was a blessing, a lesson, a turning point in my life that changed everything. I risk everything for her. Because love doesn't grow in safety, it grows in leaps of faith, in moments where you open your soul even when it trembles. It grows in the decision to give more than you take, to try even when you fear failing, to care even when you fear failing, to care even when caring hurts. Loving her made me braver. It made me softer. It made me human in ways I didn't know I had forgotten. She reminded me what it meant to feel deeply, to hope fiercely, to give without keeping score. And sometimes love is about letting go of the idea that you must protect yourself from pain, because pain happens regardless. But love, real love, gives that pain meaning. It turns it into growth, into understanding, into the kind of strength that doesn't harden you, but opens you. She opened me, she made me feel alive in a way that wasn't loud or dramatic, but profoundly real. I risked everything for her because I wanted her to know, truly know, that she was loved. Not conditionally, not temporarily, not cautiously, fully, fearlessly, completely. I wanted her to feel safe in my presence, to know that I would stand beside her no matter how uncertain the world felt. I wanted her to understand that even on the days she couldn't love herself, I would love her enough for both of us, because sometimes the heart just knows. It knows who it belongs to. It knows who it would cross oceans for, who it would break habits for, who it would break habits for, who would rebuild itself for. There were times when people questioned me, questioned why I cared so deeply, why I gave so much, why I risked parts of my life that others would have held on to. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't feel what I felt. They didn't see the way she brought meaning into moments that would have otherwise been ordinary. They didn't understand that love isn't measured in logic, but in heartbeat, in instinct, in something profoundly human that defies explanation. I risked everything for her because love like ours doesn't happen twice. Because when life offers you someone who feels like home, you don't question the distance, the danger, or the cost. You just go, you follow the pull in your chest, you trust it, you chase it, yours. And even if the world calls you reckless, your heart calls you honest. I risked everything for her because she was worth the risk. Everything for her because she was worth the risk. Every fear, every doubt, every sacrifice. She was worth breaking old patterns for, worth confronting fears I spent years avoiding, worth letting myself be seen in ways I never allowed before. She was worth standing at the edge of everything familiar and choosing the unknown, because the unknown with her still felt safer than a lifetime without her. Love demands courage, not the loud kind people applaud, but the quiet kind that grows in the solitude of your choices. The courage to stay when things get heavy, the courage to speak when your voice shakes, the courage to care when your voice shakes, the courage to care when caring feels dangerous. She gave me a reason to be courageous. She gave me a reason to break out of the shadows I had lived in for so long. And I risked everything for her because loving her wasn't a chapter in my life. It was the story, the heartbeat, the truth that made all the other truths feel small. I didn't choose her because she made life easy. I chose her because she made life easy. I never thought I would find myself standing here speaking about something so delicate, so vulnerable, and yet so absolute as love here. I never imagined that one day I would have to try and articulate what it feels like to risk everything for someone, to open yourself so completely that there is no safety net, no protection, only the rawness of your heart exposed to another human being. But life has a way of putting us into moments we are not fully prepared for, moments where the only choice is to step forward or retreat into a life half lived. And in that moment, I understood that love is not about logic, nor is it about convenience. It is about surrender, about trusting something beyond yourself, about letting another person become the axis on which your life spins. I risked everything for her, not because I was fearless, not because I believed that love was easy, but because when your heart recognizes a force as profound as this, standing still is no longer an option. Every instinct, every thought, every ounce of fear pales before the sheer gravity of feeling that she is the one worth every risk, every cost, every trembling step toward the unknown. From the very beginning, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a cinematic moment with music swelling in the background. It was quiet, almost imperceptible, like the way light creeps into a room at dawn. I noticed it in her glance, in the gentle way she moved through the world, in the laughter that was so unassuming, yet so infectious. It was in the way she listened, not just hearing the words, but absorbing the weight behind them. The pauses, the silences, the hidden cracks of doubt that she somehow understood without judgment. And I realized then that my life had shifted in ways I could not yet describe. The ordinary became extraordinary simply because she existed in it. And with that realization came an awareness. To hold on to someone like that, to protect what had become so precious, I would have to risk everything I thought I had become so precious. I would have to risk everything I thought I had ever known, everything I had ever built, and everything I thought I had to lose. Risking everything is not a romantic gesture. It is not a heroic tale sung by bards or written in novels. It is a quiet, relentless devotion that shows itself in small, almost imperceptible ways. It is staying awake when sleep is easier, because you are thinking of them. It is swallowing fear when fear screams that it is too dangerous, because their presence feels worth it. It is surrendering control over outcomes you cannot dictate, because love cannot be contained by plans, by rules, by expectations. I remember nights when the world outside felt heavy and unyielding, and yet just the thought of her presence was enough to steady me. The very act of loving her demanded courage. I didn't always feel I possessed, but somehow, in those moments, I found it. I risked every certainty I had clung to because the potential of losing her would have been unbearable, unbearable in a way that words cannot convey. And the irony is that risking everything did not make me reckless. It made me aware, profoundly aware, of what it truly means to live fully, to care fully, to love without reservation. There were countless obstacles, invisible and visible, real and imagined, that stood between us and the world we longed to share. Life has a way of testing devotion, of placing barriers that seem insurmountable, of whispering doubts that echo in the quiet corners of the mind. And yet, in every trial, I found that my commitment was not to perfection, but to perseverance. Loving her was not about seeking an easy path. It was about choosing her repeatedly every day, even when the tides of circumstance threatened to pull us apart. I risked everything not because love was simple, but because it was necessary. It became the axis upon which my choices spun, the compass guiding me through fear, through uncertainty, through moments when I felt exposed and fragile. And I knew with an unshakable certainty that a life without her would have been a life of incompleteness, a life missing its heartbeat, its meaning, its reason for taking bold steps into the unknown. I risked everything for her because she revealed the parts of me I had long forgotten. The parts I had buried under the weight of caution, under the sediment of past mistakes, under the illusion that protecting myself was the same as preserving life. That she showed me that vulnerability is not weakness. It is the conduit for connection, for intimacy, for the deepest forms of human understanding. For the deepest forms of human understanding. She reminded me that the heart, when willing, can stretch beyond its perceived limits, that it can hold fear and love in the same space, that it can bleed and still thrive, that it can break and still mend with more resilience than it had before. To love her was to engage with that paradox, to live within the tension of fragility and strength, of risk and reward, of giving everything while trusting that everything given would not be wasted. There were times when the weight of reality pressed down with a force that seemed impossible to bear. Responsibilities, expectations, judgments, and the relentless unpredictability of life all conspired to make the simplest acts of devotion feel like monumental undertakings. But even in the heaviest moments, I felt her presence as a beacon, a quiet reminder that the risks were not in vain. I risked my career, my comfort, my routines, my carefully built shields, because love like hers demanded not my adherence to safety, but my willingness to step into the unknown. And with each risk, each step into uncertainty, I discovered dimensions of myself I had never encountered, courage I did not know I possessed, empathy I had only begun to understand. Empathy I had only begun to understand. Love became the lens through which I perceived the world, sharpening every sensation, magnifying every emotion, and illuminating the beauty hidden in moments that would have otherwise gone unnoticed. I risked everything for her because her happiness became inseparable from mine. To love her was to care for her in ways that transcended selfishness, that transcended convenience. It was to place her needs, her dreams, her joys alongside my own, not as a burden, but as an honor. I remember countless instances when I chose discomfort, compromise, and even personal pain simply because her well being demanded it. Simply because her well being demanded it. Simply because the alignment of our hearts felt more important than the alignment of circumstances. And through every sacrifice, I learned that love is not a transaction, not a score to be kept, but a living, breathing entity that grows through generosity, through patience, through relentless devotion, to patience, through relentless devotion, music. I risked everything not to prove a point or to gain praise, but because she was worth it, worth the sleepless nights, worth the doubts, worth the moments when I questioned whether I had the strength to continue. To love someone so fully is to confront your own shadows, to wrestle with insecurities, to face the past that has shaped you and the fears that have bound you. I risked everything for her because in her presence I found the courage to confront these shadows. I found the determined ascension to dismantle the walls I had built around my heart. I found the humility to admit my flaws and the bravery to admit my flaws and the bravery to offer my authentic self without pretense or protection. And in doing so, I discovered a love that was not fragile because it was delicate, but resilient because it was honest, because it was willing to endure, because it was willing to embrace imperfection as part of its beauty. I risked everything for her because she believed in me, even when I struggled to believe in myself. Her faith was a quiet, steady force, a reminder that love is as much about support as it is about passion. It was in the small gestures, the encouragement when I faltered, the patience when I hesitated, the unwavering presence when a world threatened to pull us apart. Each of these moments reinforced a truth that I had long suspected but now knew with clarity. Love is not just about desire, but about dedication. Love is not just about desire, but about dedication. It is about choosing each other repeatedly, even when the path is unclear, even when the outcome is uncertain, even when the stakes are high. And I risked turns into music, and I risked everything because that dedication demanded it, because the depth of what I felt for her was matched only by the depth of what she inspired in me. There were nights filled with uncertainty when I questioned whether the sacrifices, the risks, the vulnerability were worth it. But then I would recall the quiet moments, her hand in mine, a soft laugh, a fleeting glance that carried the weight of unspoken understanding, and all doubts would dissolve. I risked everything not to create a perfect love story, but to honor a real one, a living, breathing testament to the transformative power of intimacy, of trust, of being seen in ways that matter. Love, I realized, is not found in grand gestures alone, but in the accumulation of some, all acts of courage, and the willingness to show up, to be present, to give without reservation, to risk everything for the person who has captured the essence of your heart. And to risk everything is to embrace uncertainty, to surrender control, to acknowledge that love does not come with guarantees. I risked everything for her because the possibility of loss was nothing compared to the certainty of regret if I did not try. Use. I understood that true love requires bravery, a willingness to lean into vulnerability even when the outcome is unknown, a commitment to the idea that some things are worth more than comfort, worth more than stability, worth more than safety. Music, she was and continues to be worth all of it. The sleepless nights, the anxious thoughts, the doubts, the fear, the endless negotiation between desire and consequence. And in that willingness to risk it all, I discovered the profundity of living authentically, of loving without reservation, of allowing oneself to be fully human in the presence of another who is fully human in the presence of another who is fully human in return. I risked everything for her because every part of me recognized that our connection was rare, that it was fragile, yet tenacious, that it demanded commitment not in words alone, but in the daily choices that shaped the trajectory of two lives entwined. Each decision I made, each sacrifice I offered, each fear I faced, was a testament to the profound truth that love, when genuine, does not bend to convenience. It challenges, it tests, it stretches the heart to its limits, and yet in doing so, it reveals the strength, resilience, and capacity for joy that exists within us all. I risk everything not to possess her, not to control the narrative, but to honor the shared humanity and a rare, breathtaking intimacy that we discovered together. Music. Rad. To love someone to this extent is to understand that the heart does not operate on logic alone. I risked everything for her because my heart recognized a value in her presence that transcended reason. It was not about measured outcomes or calculated benefits.